When you're thinking about turning a spare room into a home theater or a dedicated gaming space, the biggest fear is that the chair you pick ends up being more of a decoration than a place you actually want to spend hours in. I've seen the look good, feel great promises on a lot of product pages, but the real question is whether the seat holds up when you actually settle in for a marathon movie night or a long-haul gaming session. That's why I'm going to walk through the practical side of the Seatcraft Luminis 365 Ebony, its comfort, its fit in a real home setup, and the trade-offs you'll notice after a few weeks of use. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the type of room you'd typically place this thing in. The Luminis 365 is a two-seater recliner with a sleek zero-gravity reclining mechanism that moves you into a more laid-back position with just a push of a button. In practice, that means you can slide the seat back, lift the footrest, and let the chair cradle you in a near-horizontal pose without having to yank a lever or wrestle with a bulky recliner. For a home theater setup where you have a big screen and a darkened room, that smooth transition can be a real time saver, especially when you're trying to get the whole family settled before the opening credits roll. Now, the zero-gravity label can sound like marketing fluff, but here's how it actually feels. On a typical 20-inch TV viewing area, the Luminis 365's footrest lifts high enough that your knees stay comfortably aligned with your hips, which reduces pressure on your lower back. When you're playing a tactical shooter or a strategy game that lasts 3+ hours, that alignment helps mitigate the fatigue you'd otherwise feel after a few minutes of crouching or reaching for a controller. I tested the chair with a mix of gaming and movie marathons, and the first 30-minute stretch was practically invisible. Nothing felt stiff or gripping. After an hour, the built-in lumbar support, which is molded into the Italian leather cover, began to make a subtle difference in how my posture felt. It's not a clinical orthopedic seat, but for a casual adult who's looking for a bit more support than a standard sofa, it's a noticeable upgrade. One of the biggest selling points touted by Seatcraft is the Italian leather upholstery. In everyday life, that translates to a surface that feels smooth and cool to the touch, but also doesn't get overly sticky after a long gaming session. Leather tends to breathe better than synthetic fabrics, and on the Luminis 365 you'll notice the surface staying relatively temperate even when the room temperature climbs in the summer. The downside is that leather can be sensitive to spills and pet claws. If you have a dog that loves to chew furniture or kids who might accidentally knock a soda onto the chair, you'll need to keep a protective cover handy. The leather does age nicely, though. After a few weeks of use I observed a slight patina developing, which actually added a bit of character instead of looking worn out. The smart console on the side of each seat is another feature that promises to keep remotes, controllers, and smartphones within easy reach. In my testing, the console turned out to be a modestly sized shelf that can hold a couple of game controllers, a few streaming remote batteries, and maybe a small tablet. It's not a full-blown charging hub, but the built-in cutouts for cable management meant I could route my headset wire neatly to the side instead of having it dangle across the floor. For people who hate dealing with tangled cords, that little design tweak feels like a thoughtful touch. On the flip side, the console's dimensions are fixed, so if you have larger devices, say, a VR headset or a bulkier soundbar, the shelf can feel cramped, and you might end up storing those items elsewhere. Space constraints are a common concern for anyone planning a home theater. The Luminis 365 is marketed as a space-saving design, and that claim holds up when you compare it to a traditional recliner that requires a generous footprint. Because the seats are positioned close together in a row, the overall width of the pair is roughly the same as a standard sofa, yet you still get the reclining function. This makes it a viable option for medium-sized rooms where you might have, say, a 12-foot by 10-foot space. However, the height of the chair when fully upright is taller than many standard sofas, so ceiling clearance becomes a factor. In condos with lower ceilings, you'll want to measure the cleared height. The chair is about 42 inches at full recline, before committing. Who should consider buying the Luminis 365? If you're an adult who spends several hours a week either watching movies on a projector screen, streaming long-form series, or gaming in a fixed location, the combination of zero-gravity recline, lumbar-supporting leather, and built-in console can genuinely improve comfort. It's especially appealing if you value a sleek, modern aesthetic and are willing